Let's get it. Welcome to the Dear Son Show. We have meaningful conversations about life through the lens of fatherhood. It's for fathers, those with fathers, and the fatherless, so nobody's left out. These are the conversations I want my sons to access as they grow through life into manhood, so no topics are off limits. I'm your host, D. Johns. We got a repeat offender in the building, Nate Cotman.
Let's
Welcome
go.
back to the
Let's
show. How
go.
you feeling, my
I'm
brother?
good. I'm good. Listen, man, you got to know that anytime you call, I'm coming.
Proof.
Yeah.
Proof.
Anytime.
Today is just one of many times that I've called on you, and I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here.
Nate, man, for those who haven't seen you on this platform the 50 times before now, how do you present yourself?
Yeah, I present myself as a masculine vulnerability prototype and love enthusiast.
Hop right into it. Love
Yeah.
enthusiast.
It's so funny. I just recently, I did an event here in Dallas, and I just recently realized that that's what I consider myself, a masculine vulnerability prototype.
Yeah.
At first I said pioneer, but I think, more so just an example of what it means to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think people will follow a relatable example long before they follow a renowned expert. So being that relatable thing I can see, that person I can say I can touch and kind of mimic and maybe reach out to. We'll see how that goes.
And to that point, same thing with love. I don't consider myself to be a relationship expert. I don't consider myself to be a love expert. I think that sometimes people want to put me in that box.
Yeah.
And I try to explain to people that I'm on my journey and I'm learning just like you are. And also I'm not in a relationship, right? But I am enthusiastic about love and the beauty of it. I believe in it.
And you have an experience that lends its credibility to what and how you think now, and what's actually translated into your book. Let's just go ahead and get into that. You have a book out that's making some noise. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Flowers from Forgotten Fields. Along my journey of healing, I've been writing. I've just been expressing from my heart. What would love look like? What would it feel like? What would it be like to be in love with someone who is healthy? What would it be like to be a healthy person in that equation?
That part.
And so over the last year and a half, I've been writing every day a different quote. Through relationships, some that have failed, through deep emotion, through pain, through beauty, just a quote a day. And I decided to put half of those quotes into a book, Flowers from Forgotten Fields. The whole premise, the whole idea is that there is beauty in forgotten places.
Yeah.
Not only that, but sometimes we feel that love has forgotten us. But there's beauty in those moments as well.
Yeah.
And so
I
want to inspire. I always say that if you're a woman that wants to know what it's like for a man to speak to you with intention, that book is for you. If you're a man that, you want to know what it's like to speak to a woman with intention, you want some ideas, the book is for you. But it doesn't have to be gender specific either, right? If you just want to know what it's like to speak to someone with intention,
True.
the book is good.
I think that's important, man. One thing that I've learned in marriage and in fatherhood is that I didn't always have a firm grasp on communication. And even when I got better at communication, I didn't always choose to communicate well inside of my house. And I won't belabor the story about how I chose corporate over my family for a long time, though I never said it. It was apparent. And then coming out of corporate, looking back, it was very obvious. But I like where you are in life because you're younger than me. I don't even know that we're the same generation, but I like to talk to people. And I've said before, 10 years ahead of me, 10 years behind me, because it keeps perspective for me. And I have sons. Like I have a son that's graduating high school, so girls are of interest, and he'll be going out into the world and figuring things out. And I'm so detached from the dating scene or pursuing a new love, because you got to pursue love on a regular basis in a marriage as well, which is a new revelation for me. But I don't know what it's like. So I can give him my experience from a couple decades ago, because I've been married a couple decades. And from what I see from the nosebleeds in the stands is that there is a lot of piss in the dating pool. And I don't necessarily envy it. You're a more mature version of yourself than you were when you first started dating. So you have some perspective. You've been through a marriage. You've been through some healing processes. So I think it's appropriate for you to speak on the intentionality you have at this point in life that my son probably doesn't have and won't have for some years because he has to go through his period. But what is dating like now?
So dating is interesting now because, and I always say this, once you've been in a relationship, a long-term relationship, or once you've been married, you look at dating the second time around or the next time around much differently than you did prior to actually being married. But I like something that you said, though, where you said, you know, there are some things that you essentially begin to learn or realize in marriage, like the importance to continue to date, the importance of continuing to date and different things like that. I think that's important. I think it's important to understand, like, now when dating, that it really is a journey of discovery, right? So to answer your question directly, dating right now is interesting, right? Because I approach dating from a perspective of not just what I want now, but what I'll need in the future, right? It's easy to date from an aesthetics perspective. Oh, she's beautiful. Oh, she's fun. Oh, she's charming. But is she integral? Is she disciplined? Is she a woman of her word? Is she a woman of faith, right? All things that, you know, when the aesthetics may fade, right? Because beauty is fleeting.
For both parties.
Right? And probably it runs from us first, I think.
So I got to have
right.
that.
You know what I'm saying? But when all of that is said and done, are those intangibles there? Now, we live in a social media generation. We live in a generation that compares. We live in a very superficial microwave generation. And so the values are different. And so the reason why I said that dating now is interesting is because you get a lot of the aesthetics, you get a lot of the external, but the internal for a lot of people is really lacking. And so you have to be patient enough to see past the facade at the beginning of people pretending that they're everything that you want them to be.
Presentation.
To really see who they are.
Yeah.
So it could be interesting. And then the comparisons too, right?
Yeah. I'm going to pin that comparison because I want to come back to that, hopefully. See how good I am at it. Okay. But you said something about not just dating for the now, but the future. And one thing that I've said it a few times, is that in marriage, what I've learned is every version of you has to accept every version of your spouse every time for it to work. And it doesn't always happen immediately. Like there's some times where maybe she's evolving more than you are. And for whatever reason, you can't see it and appreciate it, and vice versa. Having been through a marriage, having the benefit of that experience in your rear view, also being mid-30s, that's fair to say, mid-30s, you've seen you evolve. And to give you perspective of where I'm coming from, I got married at 25.
Oh, you were younger than I was when you got married.
Right. So at 25, technically, the front cortex had just
started to develop.
Finally done its thing, okay. Right? But I didn't have any concept of, oh, she's going to change too. I knew I was going to change. I was that intuitive. Like I was going to change. That things were going to get better. I was going to get more mature. But I think I'll say guys because I'm speaking from a guy's perspective. I'll say me. I haven't spoken to all men, so I'm like cascading my opinion over everything. But it was clear that I was going to change. It wasn't so clear that she was also going to change and what that needed from me as those changes happened. I also didn't communicate what I needed from her as those changes happened. So I think there's a value in growing up together in a marriage, and there's also a disadvantage that gives you perspective to help others later in life but you go through some challenges maturing individually and trying to do that together. Like what have you seen in you evolving that prepares you for further evolution of self and also being accommodating to a woman who's going to be different 5 years after I do than she is on the day of?
That's a phenomenal question. And the answer to that is continued curiosity. I've found within myself continued curiosity along the dating journey. So let me talk about what that looks like in a relationship. And then I'm going to backpedal to what that looks like when you're trying to discover your person. The danger in most relationships, most marriages, most long-term relationships is comfortability.
Sure.
And lack of curiosity. And the belief that two people have arrived in that relationship. When in actuality, we should always be curious about the person that we're involved with. Now, what does curiosity cause us to do? The truth is that we believe in the dating process that we're on the journey of discovery. Everybody can agree.
Yeah.
With that. When we're dating, we're on the journey of discovery. But what if I told you that in a relationship, you're still on that journey?
That's an aha moment for a lot of married couples.
That journey never ends.
Yeah.
Right? And so the curiosity that you have when you're dating or courting someone to get to know them, to understand them, to see if they're the right fit is the same curiosity that we should maintain in a relationship to continue to discover the person that we're in a relationship with. Now, back to the question that I asked, what does curiosity cause us to do?
Seek information. Find things out.
Right? A genuinely curious person asks questions. They assess. And it's, as I'm talking to you, I see a light bulb. Like there's a light bulb that's like going off in your head as I'm talking to you, right? Because I saw that moment where you said,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
As we are in the relationship, we continue to ask questions. We continue to discover their likes, their dislikes, because those things change. Yeah. You made a statement. You said, I knew that I had changed, but I didn't bet on the fact that she would change, right? Continuing to be curious enough to rediscover the person that we are involved with every single day. And that's the beauty of.
That was my aha moment. You articulated better than I was going to, but it was the continued curiosity because of, like, in tying to what I said about that person is changing. There should be a natural curiosity if there's a new person developing all the time. I'm not saying wake up and be different, but it can happen like that. Some of that is natural. Some of it is scientific as I'm learning in this current phase. But just having the capacity to understand and be honest with yourself if you're open to that at this stage of life. Because if you're not open to that at this stage of life, less likely that you're going to grow into that with the person not having that capacity for them in the beginning. And what I mean by that is, like you said, we present initially. You meet a version of the person, which I guess, it's true for everybody because everybody should be evolving. But that first version looks very oftentimes accommodating and willing to do. Sometimes we know we're not either willing to maintain what's necessary that you see immediately, or that you're not even willing to do the things that are meaningful to that person. But you can distract them with other things, with joy and happiness and the shock and awe and the whiz bang, we're going somewhere for the weekend, but you're never addressing their actual need. And at some point that goes way left, oftentimes after I do.
Here's the flip side of discovering or being on a journey of discovery. The flip side is being willing to be discovered again.
Because I don't think you understand how good that is. Maybe you do. I don't want to discredit you because you said it.
No, you can.
But in a marriage, my whole platform is me often addressing issues that I've had with me, that either overcome that I'm working through. I am guilty of shielding my wife from understanding who I'm becoming. And sometimes I don't know if it's embarrassment, because what if the middle of the journey doesn't look like what I'm saying the end is going to be?
Mm-hmm.
That could be disturbing, that could be distracting, that could be off-putting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I wanted to present, boom,
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you about the job I'm pursuing. I'm going to tell you I got the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was robbing her of moments to actually be what I needed,
Mm-hmm.
because I just had this perception of a man is this. I'm just going to show up I'm going to show up complete.
Mm-hmm.
And until I'm complete, I'm actually not showing up. But my reason is because I'm incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
If that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're afraid. A lot of times as men, we're afraid to show women our journey because our journey looks like weakness or feels like weakness to us. We don't have all the answers. We haven't arrived at the destination yet. And for a lot of young men that want to date and want to date with intention, a lot of times their fear of dating with intention is the fact that they're still half-baked. And so they don't want to be vulnerable enough to let someone in to see the fact that they're not complete just yet. But what if a part of the journey of discovery for a young man that's on that journey is for a woman to see his incompleteness and to be what God actually called her to be, which was a helpmeet? And so we rob ourselves of the ability to be completed by a woman, not meaning that we walk into a relationship incomplete in who we are, because I believe that two whole people get together. But I'm saying that we walk into a relationship sometimes on that journey, and God has actually called a woman to walk alongside us on that journey to make that union complete. Right? This is the importance of masculine vulnerability.
I meant to do that earlier, but let's define it from your perspective. Masculine vulnerability, prototype, as what you are. Mm-hmm. How would you describe what that is?
Yeah. Being transparent enough to allow someone in to see the broken, incomplete parts of you at the risk of being hurt. That's what vulnerability is. That's what masculine vulnerability is to me, right? Specifically from a man's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I would consider to be.
So again,
let's actually define. I'm sorry. Let's actually define for a second. I saw somebody talking about this.
Okay.
They were saying that men don't like the term vulnerability.
Jason Wilson.
Yes, because it opens us up to the possibility of harm.
Yeah.
Right. And so he said, I don't really like the term vulnerability because no man wants to be open to the possibility of harm.
Yeah.
But the truth is that when we love and we open our heart to someone, we open ourselves up to the possibility of being harmed.
Call it what you want to. That right. And so that's a.
So so basically what he was explaining is that men don't like, I'm sorry to cut you off. No, what he was saying is that men don't like to be considered vulnerable because we don't like being open to harm.
Yeah.
But in my humble opinion, I believe that love requires us to be open to the possibility of harm. It's a risk.
Yeah. I don't think you can decouple it from love specifically.
Correct.
Maybe in other areas of our life, we
Correct.
don't want to appear vulnerable. I get that, especially having children of all ages.
Sure.
I want my oldest daughter to believe that I'm going to punch whoever in the face needs to be punched in the face when they violate her.
Right.
I want my youngest son to understand that Dad ain't scared of that. That kind of thing. So there's the I think there's a duality to it. When the reference to the potential solution or the potential of God's plan of placing a woman in a man's life to help him complete the journey, to be his helpmeet along the journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's this recurring theme of, girl, don't date potential. Does that, number one, does that happen where you are in life, or has it happened wherever you were in life before? And I say that because, again, you're more evolved now and you present different. But was there ever a stage in life where that could have been an issue if someone you were seeking out wasn't cool with the ratio of potential to get to having it all together where you were in life?
Yeah, I've been guilty of saying that I don't think that people should date potential, but my perspective on that has changed. And let me tell you the reason why. I think it depends on the stage in life, the age and stage in life that that person is in. If that person is younger, they're going to be full of potential. Most men don't even discover who they are until they're in their 30s, and some even into their 40s. So to tell a 20-year-old or tell someone in their 20s not to date someone with the potential, well, y'all both got potential.
Right.
Y'all both are unpotenched. You know what I'm saying? And so I believe that at certain stages in life, it's okay to date potential. Yeah. I believe that as you grow and as you evolve, that there's less tolerance for someone walking in their potential versus being potenched, right? As I like to say. But what happens if in someone's 40s or 50s they go through a transition? And now
transitioning.
Who they were is much different now. That means that right now they're walking in their potential.
Yeah.
Right? On a journey to be who they see themselves being in the future. I would just say that it's to each its own. I think a lot of times we create rules and frameworks around and beliefs around certain things. And I think it's just case by case. Depends on the person. Now, if somebody is operating solely off potential, their entire life, and they never show any evidence of actually achieving the thing that they're working towards, then that's a concern. They don't complete the things that they start.
Yeah.
But I believe that along life's journey, we have resets sometimes. And during those resets, we are operating out of potential until we achieve the thing that we're desiring to achieve. And I just think that we need to show people more grace.
It's definitely
in that process.
It's relative to the completion point of that phase of life or that phase of that thing, right? Because if you're always setting a new goal, that means that there's something further out in front of you than where you are right now. So the only measure of getting there, of what you haven't accomplished, is the potential to actually accomplish that thing and complete that goal.
Not only that, but we have less tolerance for men who walk in their potential than we do for women who are walking in their potential.
Let's talk about that. I'm hitting all the trite expressions with you because you're still in the mix and I'm in the stands. Bringing to the table, is that still a conversation? Well, let's have a conversation on it and your thoughts. I don't need you to go fetch anything else that you're hearing in the dating streets, but is that a thing?
I think it is a thing. I think it is a thing. But it depends on how we talk about it. Typically, when we talk about a man bringing something to the table, we're talking about him bringing provision. We're talking about him bringing finances. We're talking about him bringing infrastructure. We're talking about him bringing vision. But I do think that women have a obligation and a responsibility to bring things to the table too, like their ability to nurture, like their wisdom, like their intuition, like their discernment, like their grace, like their sensual modesty, like their foresight, like their spiritual gifts. Those are all things of value that can be brought to the table.
Why do you think well, I think based on my conversations and what I've come across, there's so little focus on the soft skills that a man needs to bring to the table. Why do you think that is?
Because our society doesn't look at most men as comprehensive men. Most men are not comprehensive men. We don't look at the totality of who a man should be. We only look at him based upon his ability to provide and protect. When in actuality, there are so many other facets to who and what a man is that we don't even consider.
Yeah.
There is a responsibility for a man to be a nurturer as well.
Absolutely.
He has a responsibility to nurture his woman. He has the responsibility to steward his children. That takes a level of nurturing that we don't give most men, that we don't even give most men the responsibility to do. And so for most men, when they've hit the two major ones, like protecting and providing, they feel that they are doing their job as a man. But what happens when your daughter comes home and she has questions about life? She has questions about relationships. She has questions about the world. She has questions about God. Do you have the ability to pour into her in a way that she needs? In that moment, she may not need a protector and a provider. She may need wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
She may need someone who's a cup that's pouring into another cup. She may need a man's softness in that moment. She may need his patience. Those things are important.
I have 3 daughters. Very true. Very true. I had an episode with Corey Hughes several weeks ago, and it's becoming a thing. It's very relevant to this conversation, but he's been through a divorce, and we were talking about the aftermath of it, and we end the conversation, and he says, "Divorce hurt," and I pressed him. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What do you mean? What I mean?" I said, "What is the hurt of it?" He lists all of these things. That becomes a clip on social media. TikTok eats it up. Plenty of comments, and just the range of responses was eye opening for me.
Mm.
Like it was heartbreaking, because you have those that are so holier than thou, and they have every answer as to why your marriage didn't work, right? But we don't get to ask them about theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the guys and the women that were agreeing and adding on to the list of what the hurt is in their case. Then you had the part of the population that says, "This is why I will never do it."
Mm.
You've done it, undone it, but you want to do it again. Why?
First and foremost, I believe that marriage and family is God's design for us. And so I want to exist in that design that God has for us. Secondly, I believe I'm called to be a husband. And I actually desire a wife. I desire that union that comes from being married to someone. I desire the favor that comes from God. I desire to love a woman in the way that she's supposed to be loved, and to create a lineage of children that see a man properly love a woman and a woman properly love a man. I want the focus that comes with having a spouse. You know, when you're single, there is an incompleteness associated with being single.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a constant assessing process that you go through when you meet people that could potentially be your person. But sometimes that can also feel like a distraction, because it's like, yo, I got to get to know this person, get to know maybe multiple people if you're not dating exclusively. You're pouring out your resources in many cases on these people that you're getting to know. Most often than not, it doesn't work out, right? It should only work out maybe one time if you get married once. Right. If you get married more than one time, then maybe twice, 3 times, But there's a certain level of focus and groundedness that comes from being married.
Yeah.
And listen, the first time around, I did it all wrong. I'm going to get it right with the right person.
What do you think contributes to the view or the narrative of marriage not being worth it?
Well, if we just look at statistics alone, we know that most marriages don't work out. So for men, they feel like it's a financial risk. For women, they feel like it's an emotional risk. They don't want to be out here looking stupid. Marry somebody and he's out here, dealing with everybody and their mom.
Yeah, literally.
And so for most people, they feel that they could find happiness, which they can, and fulfillment outside of the context of a marriage. And so for most people, they just don't want to go through the quote unquote hassle of taking that journey and it not working out, because the statistics are showing that in most cases it's not gonna work out. And so they feel like the odds are against them.
would you suggest, you don't have to suggest, do you have different standards now for who you entertain and who you bring around and who you keep around?
Yeah, I do. I do have different standards. You know, the interesting thing though is that sometimes, and I talked about this, I think in a recent post, sometimes we can find ourselves entertaining what's not for us out of loneliness, right? Or in an attempt to fill a void. And so I've done that. And I've learned valuable lessons through that process. And so now I'm more selective when it comes to who I entertain on that level. And if it's somebody that I entertain, it's somebody that I have to see the potential in them being, you know, a lifelong partner.
Yeah. Do you find that women respect your standards? Because sometimes, it comes across in sound bites as if we're to meet the woman's standard and the man should be happy that the woman is giving him the time of day. Do you find that they actually respect standards or?
Yeah, I find that a lot of women respect my standards.
Okay.
You know, I don't run into that issue where women feel like I should be happy to be in their presence or dating them or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think if anything, they honor how I show up in the world for the most part.
Gotcha.
And so I think that plays a big part in them not feeling like, oh, I should be excited to be in their presence and all of that.
Gotcha. I'm gonna get really on brand for this conversation.
Okay, let's
for
go.
this platform. Dear son, what I wish my father told me, and I think I may have asked you that question before, so I won't ask you that specifically, but gathering all of your life experiences to date, when it is time for you to be a father, what things do you think will be key and critical for you to pour into your children?
Mm-hmm. So I want to speak specifically to what I would say to my son. Okay.
I don't want to limit you. It was
No,
front
for
of
sure,
mind,
for sure. And maybe I'll touch on a little bit of what I would say to my
because you
daughter.
don't know what you're gonna get.
Right. But if I was to have a son, I would want him to understand that it's okay for him to feel. We have robbed little boys of the beauty of feeling, crying, expressing, because we have taught them that it's a sign of weakness. And I want him to understand that it's not a sign of weakness, but it's an immense strength. That God designed us to feel, to express, to even cry. You know, when we cry, we release stress hormones. Is it possible that the reason why little boys are so stressed and so angry and so frustrated is because they haven't given themselves the permission, or we haven't given them the permission to do what God has created us to do, which is cry and to express emotion? So that's one thing that I would tell them. Two, son, you are what no one says you are except for God. Right? And your parents, if they are reflecting his voice
Right.
in your life. I want him to know that he can achieve anything that he puts his mind to with discipline and perseverance. I want him to understand the importance of discipline. I would want him to understand from an early age that although I am an example, that I'm an imperfect example. I think a lot of times as parents feel the pressure of seeming perfect, seeming like they don't have any kinks in their armor. I would want him to understand that I am an imperfect man that loves him deeply. And I am willing to show him my flaws in hopes that he won't repeat them. And then lastly, I would tell him that the most valuable relationship that he could ever have is a relationship with the Most High.
Absolutely.
And if he leans into that relationship, he'll be a better father to him than I could ever be.
You feel like you're on the clock.
Yes and no. I've already come to the conclusion I'm going to be an old father. So it is what it is. So in that sense, yes. I'm like, I already know that when I pick up the kids from school, they're going to be like, your granddad's here. You know, like, okay, I get it. So in that sense, I feel like I'm on the clock. But in another sense, age doesn't mean that it's over. And so I'll be old, but we'll still have a good time. I'll be able to pour a lot of wisdom into them. And I plan to live a long time. So if I have kids in my 40s, you know, hopefully I get a strong 60 years with them.
It's dope, man. I'm going through been going through the New Testament morning by morning, chapter by chapter for the last several months.
Kudos to you.
Appreciate it. Some of it is intimidating. I'm a Revelation now. And Revelation, I'm finding that I have to get advice. And luckily I have a father that's a man of God and follows sound instruction and teachings and is still tapped in with God so I can reach out to him. That wasn't necessarily the point, but something that came up in another conversation is that throughout the New Testament, Acts to Revelation, there's this continuous theme of God addressing sexual immorality. And I want to get your thoughts because you talked about discipline. I want to get your thoughts on the importance of sexual discipline while in pursuit. Even after I do is important. It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your thoughts on that, right? Because it's one thing to steer a young man, a young brother to thus saith the Lord, abstain, abstain, abstain. And then he has the experience, and experience calls him almost every day, several times a day, to come back to that experience. So whether it was in the context of marriage, outside the context of marriage, having that experience, being married, seeking again, like how big of a influences or how big of a discipline focus is that for you?
Man, it's so important. So, you know, the Most High said that a man with no control is like a city that's without walls. The less sexual discipline we are, the more susceptible we are to danger. Okay. And I hate to bring this up as a point of reference, but Shannon Sharp. Okay. A man in his 50s. And first it was, you know, him going live with Mama Michelle, right?
I can't even entertain how that was a mistake.
Yo, nevertheless.
We are. Yeah.
Nevertheless, right? First it was that. Now you're looking at somebody who is on the verge of getting or was in discussions. He probably would receive a contract for $100 million for his podcast, doing very well. But he lacks sexual discipline in that particular area, right? And now we're looking at something else coming out where now somebody's possibly, it could be exploitation, whatever the case may be. But we're not even going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that he lacks sexual discipline in that way,
Yep.
right? And instead of finding a wife and settling down, right, he doesn't have control in that area, and so it leads to harm, danger, because of that. For me, it's an ongoing journey. You know what I'm saying? I was a virgin until I was 23 years old. And so I exercised a lot of that sexual discipline early. And then to your point, once I experienced it, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, it was kind of like Pringles. Once you pop, you just don't stop, right?
Pookie.
Right, exactly.
Pookie Jack.
And so then from that journey, I mean, once I experienced it, I went on a journey of promiscuity, right? And a lot of times we don't use the word promiscuous when it comes to men, but it's a real thing. I went on a journey where I was having my experiences. I was exploring. I was discovering. I was curious.
Yeah.
Right?
You're going to learn today.
I was curious, right? Only women. When I say curious, I want to, let's be clear, okay? I was curious about women, not about men. For me, it's a process. I have moments where I do really, really well. And I'm really disciplined in that area. And then I've had seasons where I haven't been as disciplined. And so I understand the importance of it, but I just think it ebbs and flows for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biggest lesson that you learned about yourself in the last year?
In the last year, the biggest lesson that I've learned about myself is how important it is for us to trust our intuition. So in the last year, my intuition has told me some things that I've disregarded only for my intuition to be true. And so I told myself that this is the last time where I would disregard my intuition or trust what someone says beyond what I am feeling inside that it is. Because God has given us our intuition, our discernment as a way to protect us. And some people may say, well, sometimes your intuition is off. Okay, that's true, right? Sometimes we can carry traumas of the past into new spaces and we believe that it's our intuition. However, in my experience, my intuition has been accurate probably 85 to 90% of the time. I feel like those are good odds. Even if I'm off 10%, I'm willing to place my bets on the fact that my intuition is good. 90% is 80 to 85 to 90% is pretty good, right? In any other space that you go into. So even if my intuition is wrong, in the rare instances that my intuition is wrong, I'm still willing to ride with it.
Yeah.
So for me, the biggest thing is trust your intuition, stand on it, and move accordingly.
What scares you about marriage?
What scares me about marriage?
That 10% or
No, it's not my intuition that scares me. I think I'm more afraid of me than I am anybody else or anything else. If a marriage falls apart and it wasn't because of my own frailties, I can live with that. But I can't miss twice. Yeah, I can't miss twice. I have to be who God has called me to be in the next marriage.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I have to be disciplined. I have to be a man of integrity. My word and my actions have to align. I have to be who she needs. Yeah. I have to be who I need. Yeah. So the biggest fear is the possibility of not being everything that I'm supposed to be, right? But I'm just working every day to be who God has called me to be. I'm letting the chips fall where they may.
I think you got a good shot, brother. Just make sure you send me an invite. Make sure you send me an invite.
Front row.
Indeed. I'll be there with the camera.
Yes, sir.
As we wrap, man, how can people find you if you want them to find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram from Nate with Love, TikTok from Nate with Love, Facebook from Nate with Love. I don't really post on Facebook like that.
You really don't.
I need to. Yeah. YouTube from Nate with Love, from NateWithLove.com. I mean,
we talked about your book that's published now, but you have another book that you're working on. I kind of want to lead into that, and you'll come back at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's the current?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a children's book for boys.
Love it.
On the importance of vulnerability, feeling your emotions. You know, I heard a quote that said, "Never trust a warrior who doesn't cry." And it woke up something in me. And I realized, the majority of children's books are for young ladies, girls.
Mm.
It's hard to find, not hard to find, but it's much more rare to find a book targeted to young boys.
Sure.
And so again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where we've given women the permission to be everything that they're supposed to be. But we've done young men a disservice when it comes to them understanding the importance of their own emotions. And so I want to be a big bro.
Dope. Well, speaking of books, I got to do a better job. I'm doing a better job.
Let's go.
Physical copy of my book, Dear Son, 20 Life Prompts That Facilitate Effective Parenting. If you're hearing this or you're watching this, the book is available. Very proud of it, man. I know God gave it to me and I disrespected him did him a disservice by sitting on it for so long. But is it available now? And it's it is based on thoughts, my original thoughts that I believe were divinely inspired and resonated with people on social media. But I wanted to add more value to it by providing the how I got to that space in life and what I was working through, how I worked through it, and challenge you to work through your version of it prompt by prompt. So if you're not ready to do some work, get it and it'll be there when you're ready to do some work. If you're ready to do some work, get it and you'll have to do the work. Either way, get it.
Go buy it.
Get the
for
book.
sure.
So I am proud that I'm getting out of my way of dimming my light. So a lot of that has to do with you. I know you're not expecting me to say that, but we have regular conversations about being accountable to pushing each other. So I appreciate that about you as well, sir.
Man, my pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure. And I want to say this too publicly. You know, we've been rocking with each other for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for you. You know what I'm saying? From the moment that we've connected, you've always been a supporter of the visions that I've had. And at times you've even been frustrated when I didn't execute because you like, bro, you got all the intangibles.
Go.
Like you got everything, right? So I just appreciate you, just everything that you do. You know what I'm saying? And you are the man behind the camera. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I'm doing my Q&As, any idea I have that I want to execute, you like, I'm down. Just let me know when, where, how. And so I just want to give you your flowers, man. I think a lot of times people do good for people and they don't get the recognition that they deserve. But I would not be in this space that I'm in without you. Like you are just as much a part of my journey, you know, as anybody, and even more so. So thank you for the sacrifices. Thank you for being available many times on a moment's notice. Thank you for always supporting my dreams, and we're going places together.
Only up, brother. I appreciate you saying that. That's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.